Okay, welcome everyone. I, Council President Walsh, call the September 8th Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. As a reminder, we continue to have a remote aspect to our meetings, and both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. There are multiple public comment opportunities at tonight's meeting. There's a general public comment opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, or you can make comments after the presentation and council question and answer period on tonight's agenda item. So I am wondering if there's anybody, we've got lots of folks here, but I think many of them are staff and consultants. So do we have anybody wanting to make public comment? Okay, we are going to have public comment. Let me read through a few things. Members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. If you're joining us virtually, yeah, it's not that. We're having a little bit of an echo issue, and so maybe Tim will help us troubleshoot. But in the meantime, if you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, you're going to press *3. If you've joined by computer or smartphone, look for the hand icon, or you can send the host a chat message. If you're in the room and did not sign up, I'll ask for other speakers. So in general, you are invited to address council regarding matters that are directly related to Issaquah's programs, projects, services, or events. Comments related to political campaigns are not permitted. Please direct comments to the whole council, not to individuals. And while we can't answer questions on the dais at this point, if you want to give your information, we can contact you to follow up if needed. When recognized, you will come up to the lectern. You're going to press the button on there and it will turn red, or if you're virtual, you'll unmute your microphone. State your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you're attending virtually and do not respond when your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, we will have to move on, but you're encouraged to rejoin the meeting if available. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. And so now I saw a hand. If you'd like to, love to hear from you.
Good evening. This one. Can I approach the dais with some flyers from the library? I don't know if there's a way to. Am I allowed to hand them to the? Thank you, Wally. Good evening. My name is Brian Candelori. I'm joined with one of my colleagues, Dan Hilton. I am the regional manager over this library and a few others in the area. So thank you for allowing us to come, Council President and the board, City Council. It was really nice to see Wally last week at the Renton branch, which is the southernmost branch in my region, along with Mark from Parks and Rec. We are looking to, I need to get Mark's email. We can, Jeff, that's probably why it didn't go through. I will work on that. But I'm coming to you with good news. So our library down the street, we've seen an explosion in our interest to summer reading this year. So hopefully some of you with little ones have come by and gotten our summer reading kits. They come with a coupon to Red Robin. But more importantly, they come with Band-Aids if they're for kids. They have I always call them Chewbacca, but oh God, assist. Sasquatch, thank you, Wally, and please don't tell our director. Yeah, sorry about that. So the Sasquatch / Chewbacca, he comes. We also have free books for the kids that come in, and just last year, in fact, there was a little girl that came in, and there we go, I think. And it never ceases to amaze me as a librarian how excited little kids get just to write their name on a piece of paper, and then I think they think I'm slapping it against the glass, but this little girl she hopped up and then just kind of tapped it on. So thank you. We have a number of programs that are starting soon at the Issaquah branch. We're excited to announce that we have a full-time adult and teen librarian there now, which took us a good year to get going. Dan joins us from Seattle Public with a great deal of experience over there. So Dan will be coming next year. And we are looking forward to, once I get Jeff's email down, thank you, Wally. We are looking for other ways to partner with our city. We also have a Librarian Day coming up in a week or so down the street. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have, and really just to thank you and your community for its strong support. I also came, as Wally mentioned, in fact, Dan and I both worked Small World at Brooklyn Public Library, while not at the same time. But King County Library and its communities really support the work it does here, which is what attracted me to it. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for the support of the community.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you being here and dealing with this. I would love to spend some time thanking you for everything, but I think I'm going to pause for a second and see if we can fix this echo, if you don't mind. But thank you for coming and making public comments. Fantastic. Okay. So I will see if we've got any other public comments now that we've fixed our echo issue, but I'm not seeing any. So I'll just make a note at the July 21st City Council meeting, the City Council referred the motion to approve AB 9026, the WashDOT Transfer of Development Rights Development Agreement Extension for Bellevue College, to tonight's committee of the whole meeting. However, additional time is required to gather the information requested by the City Council, so the item has been delayed to the October 20th City Council meeting. So if anybody was looking for that on tonight's meeting and didn't see it, that is why. Wally, I know you had one item that you wanted to just jump in before our agenda items, so go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Council President, members of the council. Good evening. We are fortunate for the third year in a row to be participating with the International City County Management Association and the Department of the Army on a fellow program where the Army matches cities with senior Army civilian executives who manage bases around the world. And I'm happy to introduce Ken Estabrook, who's with us this evening. Why don't you come up to the podium? You can say a few words. Ken has been involved in installation management for much of his career, as well as a stint with the General Services Administration. Ken will be with us through the week to shadow a little bit about what we're doing. The similarities between an Army post and a city's management are strikingly similar. Ken, as he approaches the end of his Army service, is very interested in continuing his public service, and so was keen to come here to Issaquah and see how cities operate. So Ken, happy to have you say just a couple of words if you'd like, but we're just really pleased to have you and hope it's a good learning experience for you during the course of the week.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And this has been a blessing opportunity for me. I've served 33 years in the U.S. government, and now I'm getting an opportunity to retire from one aspect of the U.S. government and transition into another. And I so desire and dream to continue my public service. And it's been an opportunity, but this is a wonderful opportunity because the U.S. military carries over 114, U.S. Army only carries over 114 cities around the world. I've worked my career through public works and kind of city management programs, and I've made my career up into a senior civilian position, which is very similar to what Wally does as city administrator. And so I'm taking the opportunity, and this has been a very blessed opportunity to work with ICMA and Wally as a shadow and see how Issaquah runs the city over here and learn some new things and just kind of compare what I do to what you guys do here to run this beautiful city. And so far it has not disappointed. This is a very beautiful city. I've heard a lot about it over the years because my oldest son lives in the area, and I've decided to retire to this area in Washington. And so this is a beautiful city, and I'm looking forward to shadowing more with Wally and learning more about the city.
And Ken, before you step down, could you share with the council your last post was?
Oh, so Wally met me through virtual through the ICMA Fellows Program, and I was, well, technically, I'm still currently assigned to Marshall Islands, in Kwajalein Marshall Islands. And I'm kind of used to doing remote and isolated locations, so I decided to challenge me and my family and go as remote as we possibly could, and the Marshall Islands did not disappoint. So it is literally, if you think of an aircraft carrier, the Kwajalein Atoll, and if you look it up, you'll see it. It is literally an airstrip with a little bit of support services, and have approximately 1,500 U.S. expats serving there on the island, and then probably another 3,000 local Marshallese. With our agreements and our collaboration with the Marshallese, we do a lot of technical and scientific stuff in Kwajalein, and it is a very unique and unusual assignment, and I learned a lot from it. But I did my time there, and now it's time to come back to the real world.
Great.
It's
Thank
been a
you
great
again.
opportunity.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Director Bobkowitz, for including us and telling us all about this program and what we're getting out of it. We have one agenda item for tonight's meeting, which is COM 0169, the prioritization of future long-range planning work. Some may know this as our Title 18 future updates list, and so we are going to get a presentation from Director Dollywall from Community Planning and Development. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the council and any community members that may be online. Before we jump into the presentation piece, I want to take a minute to invite Kristen Leeson, our planning manager, to introduce our new planning team. Some of our new planners are here who will be touching the various forms of work plans. So come on up.
Good evening, Kristen Leeson, and as you probably know, we've been downsized a little bit, so we're sort of in a rebuilding year. So I wanted to introduce who we have here tonight. We have two brand new planners to us. We have Yi Chen, who comes to us most recently from Kent. You want to stand up? And from Kent and Linwood, and has done lots of work with other cities. And then we have Andrew Love, another associate planner, who most recently comes to us from AHBL Consulting. And then, as you know, Emily Medina, I believe, I'm not sure, but Emily has just recently been promoted from associate planner to senior planner. And then last but definitely not least, we have Thomas Valdrez, who is our senior transportation planner. I know you're familiar with him. We are also in the process of hiring an assistant planner and then another principal planner to fill my role. So those resumes are in, the applications are closed, and we will start those soon, and then we'll be back up to full speed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. So let me quickly share my screen. So we're here tonight to share with you some of the multiple lists that we've been maintaining of different long-range planning work items and solicit your input on prioritization of various items with the goal of, let me see if it can, okay. So we chose a time frame of 2026 to 2028, primarily because 1 year is left for this budget cycle, and then there'll be a 2-year additional budget cycle. But that gives us a time frame because some of these larger projects may straddle years here and there. So before we get into what's in the hopper currently, we wanted to kind of remind of where we are and what we've accomplished in the last 4 years, since I've been here. So we've We were knee-deep in Title 18 Land Use Code overhaul, as you all read every week. All our boards and commissions read all those detailed memos, and that work was completed in 2023 based on 13 goals and outcomes that council had identified at the time. During those conversations, we started hearing about things that were not within the scope of those goals and outcomes, but were good ideas that we didn't want to lose. And so, through council's advice at the time, we started what was initially called a whiteboard list, but then we've termed it as a future updates list. So that was maintained throughout those couple of years of the Title 18 update. The other thing we committed to during that update was to do an annual code update, that we won't repeat the mistake of the past of letting go of things that need to get cleaned up. So the idea here was that they would be, small housekeeping type of amendments. But what happened in the last 2 years was stuff came from the state that we had to deal with also, and in terms of code updates. So we bundled them into housekeeping, some policy discussions, and some legislative updates that we were required to. So those were all done. Multiple touches with different boards and commissions and council ordinances were adopted in 2024 and 2025. We finished that work, we didn't really get a break, and we moved into the comprehensive plan periodic update. So that was, thank you to council for funding that work. We had a consultant working on that. Because Issaquah had developed in different master plan communities and an EIS was done for Central Issaquah, we felt it was time to kind of do a full environmental impact statement for the entire city. So that work was funded through budget asks, and that was also concluded. A lot of technical work, but it sets us up for a better foundation for the future comprehensive planning work. The other projects, this is not a comprehensive list, but we picked a few that we wanted to highlight. We got a $100,000 grant from Department of Commerce because council had adopted the Housing Strategies Action Plan through a lot of community conversations in 2018, 17, 18. And so this was to implement what we had in our comp plan, in our action plan. And we identified 3 strategies out of the total 9 that we took a deeper dive. And so this work was funded by the grant and Eco Northwest producer report. We summarized some of the key takeaways for us, and those are included in your packet. Middle housing code update. So for community members that may be listening, these are, allowing duplexes and ADUs on all lots that have single family zones. But we also had to tackle cottage housing and co-living and things of that nature. So robust community participation, council adopted those code amendments earlier this year. Some of the other items that came on the housing realm from the state, co-living housing. So this is your, where you share a kitchen, but you have your separate units. There was some code flexibility required, so we brought that code for council adoption. Reuse of commercial buildings from a land use lens to allow ease of conversion of these existing commercial buildings. Was a state bill. Those are incorporated into our code now. Impact fees to be based on residential units. We recently did that work and brought that for council adoption. The idea that from a policy objective, fewer fees for smaller units in terms of incentivizing that the building community would build smaller units and hence more affordable units is sort of the process. The other really unique thing to Issaquah that I think some of that credit goes to Wally for culling code, cross-departmental team to do this work, which was housing continuum work, was sort of what was called, what we gave it a title. There's a cool graphic. So it's human services, community planning and development, and economic development came together and talked about housing from a holistic approach for different segments of the Issaquah community, the needs, and how to make it happen on the ground. So through that initiative was formed this housing investment pool program. So the city had already adopted 1/10 of 1% sales tax House Bill 1590 that allowed cities to do it. Otherwise, if they didn't, then King County could do that. Issaquah is one of the few cities that took that initiative, and so we have a funding source to help housing within our city limits. Also, some of the other things that had come up from the previous work from Eco Northwest was looking at Pioneer Program and seeing, using that as a basis to remove some of the barriers for first in the market sort of conversation. We've drum rolled the housing dashboard, so that's all done, and that sort of gives the higher picture of tracking where the housing is going and what's happening in that fashion. As we all have heard, we're data-driven, decision making here. So moving on from all of the work that has been done, what's in our hopper currently? So again, this is not a comprehensive list, but we wanted to tease out a few of the larger things that we know we either have to do it or they're high priority for council. But we're soliciting input from this. So comprehensive plan update, we get requests for comp plan updates. We maintain a docket. We add to it. We have that conversation, which ones to do. Sometimes these are coming our way from legislative bills that we need to change some of our policies related to one item or the other. So that's number one. We had conversations with council around wildland urban interface code update. And at the time, Department of Natural Resources at the state was producing these wildfire risk assessment maps. And that work needs to then inform how we want to regulate other standards. But council picked one of the items, which was, long turnaround. If you're over 300 feet, you need to have a turnaround. So that was adopted as part of the building code. So now we're waiting for the new maps to come out, which we understand are going to happen next summer. That will then inform how best to come up with regulations, whether it's structure hardening, because there's stuff that's in the building code that relates to what type of roofs you can have, how to have your openings and protect your structure, to vegetation management, and they call it a defensible space. But that's could be a significant amount of work. Impact fee study. So we heard from the development community while we were soliciting input on Title 18, as well as the work that was done that establishes our fees was done in 2020, which is quite recent than some of the other cities, but a comprehensive look at that after the concurrency update on the transportation is done, the new models are updated, we should look at, that's our recommendation, but it could be, a budget ask if council decides to invest into that. Bellevue College Development Agreement, as it was mentioned, that's coming up for some discussion because a portion of that expires at the end of this year. So depending on council's direction, there may be work involved with that. Shoreline Master Plan periodic update. So we have the lake and we have two streams, Issaquah Creek and the North Fork of Issaquah Creek, that are shorelines of the state. And there's a state law that we have to update these regulations every 10 years. The last periodic update we did was 2019. So we have to do, get our stuff done by 2029. But a lot of that work and public outreach starts a couple of years prior to the actual update that we have to adopt. So that's in our hopper. Number 6 and 7 are
Director Dhaliwal, before you go on, can you go back to the other slide? The Shoreline Master Plan, I believe we updated that in 2025, if I'm looking at the document correctly.
Yeah, but except for the periodic update, so the Department of Ecology doesn't consider, we did the periodic update in 2019, and then we said we need to go further on outdoor lighting, dock lighting, and then the critical area code update that we were doing, those got embedded in the Shoreline Master Program because they're not separate. So Ecology wants those, embedded in as a package. But Ecology has a whole protocol of like what the periodic update includes. looking at best available science for this, that, and the other. And so that work was done in 2019. So they don't consider the update, the last update to meet that periodic update requirement.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a lot of debate in the community because Fish and Wildlife has come up with a guidance about stream buffers, which is much more larger.
I'm sorry, can we turn the volume up? We can see if we can turn the volume up, or if you can speak more closely into the microphone.
I will try.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, apologize for that. Yeah, we were having an echo problem before, and I was trying to stay away from the mic a little bit, but I'll talk into it. So moving on, so number 6 and 7 are housing strategy or housing action work plan that the city finished in 2018. And then the Eco Northwest was the report that was done. So we probably need to have some conversation with council about updating the strategy work plan and also anything else from those two documents that we need to prioritize in the coming years. Number 8 is, as you know, the city will get into the transportation slide, and Thomas can talk more eloquently about transportation-related items there. But this is an item that once the city selects its preferred station location, then we need to start thinking about transit-oriented zone or overlay around it. What does that look like? What are some policies and some regulations that we want to have adopted? Number 9 is neighborhood plans. So as part of the comprehensive plan update, there was discussion about neighborhood plans and talking to communities and members in each of these neighborhoods, and the template for the neighborhood plans was finalized during those conversations with Planning and Policy Commission and Council as part of that comp plan update. But now we need to start doing them for each of the neighborhoods. So it won't all happen at the same time, but coming up with a game plan of which ones to tackle first and how and all of that. The other housing related work that, as I mentioned, the dashboard, Puget Sound Regional Council has a lot of reporting things that come our way. Office of Financial Management has reporting information that we have to produce based on buildable lands analysis and all of that kind of stuff. So it's tedious work, it takes time, but it's required for us to kind of do all of those. Pioneer program, we want to kind of revisiting that. Is it working? Is it not working? What do we want? How do we want to tweak it? And then some. So we've got the Title 18 updates. We've got the future updates list. We have our legislative updates. That's an attachment of all the bills that were passed in the last session. And we teased out a few things here to highlight for you all. When we did the Title 18 update, we had this job preservation requirement on a parcel by parcel basis. So if you took out commercial, you had to preserve that many number of jobs for that parcel. It was impractical for us to implement. It had unintended consequences of getting more traffic trips because it was based on number of transportation trips. So we don't necessarily want to have all our, people clogging our streets because transportation is an issue here. But we do want to figure out mixed use. Currently, it's only allowed in one mall street. With the TOD work that will have transit-oriented development overlay work with the light rail station potentially. This could happen with that work, but we do need to have some conversation about how to create it a complete community, and as we look at transitioning from single use to a mixed use district. We also heard from council to keep an eye out for middle housing implementation. How is it going? Do we want to continue the impact fee exemptions? What should we do about frontage improvements? So we'll keep tracking that and stack it up for your conversation. State legislative updates that may come our way that are already included. So we want to make sure we stay ahead of them and not surprised if we've missed something in state law that we should be aligned with. We also heard step back requirements were more onerous. These conversations happened with the TOD project and also with a private developer who was looking at developing, but in Central Issaquah. So we put that on this list. And then this is a new one, but council did rezone a church property. So we've been engaged with them, sending them to Arch for some options and things that they can look at doing on their property. But this is a Bellevue's done some work in this area, and there are a lot of land under religious institutions that potentially could be a good partnership to get some housing at a different scale than perhaps you would get in a Central Issaquah. So we want to explore that, see if that is something that council is interested in adding to the work plan. And then, of course, our cleanup updates. That sort of is more housing, kind of other long-range planning updates. I'll invite Thomas Valdres, Senior Transportation Planner, to talk about this slide, because he can talk better than I can.
Great. And again, I'm Thomas Valdres, Senior Transportation Planner. Thanks for having me tonight. So I do have 6 items related to transportation. The first one is finishing the Central Issaquah Station and alignment study. So council did provide $100K this year. That project has kicked off. We do need to finish it, and hoping to finish it by the end of 2026 with another $100K. So this project ultimately will lead to us developing a locally preferred alternative for the station and track alignment. Providing those recommendations to Sound Transit will be in 2027. Many mentioned previously that we are looking to, look at a transit overlay zone. So this project will also sort of tease out some of those ideas for a transit overlay zone, things that we should be thinking about, but then implementation wouldn't happen after. So again, Sound Transit, as early as 2027, we'll be looking at their planning phase. So assuming a 2041 delivery goal, we've then worked backwards, and we're hoping to have the study given to Sound Transit as early as 2027. For Eastlink connections, I guess I'll say this is underway. So we're kind of looking at phase 2 now. Phase 1 finished up August 30th. So we now have a new bus line, which is very exciting. So it's the 203. It runs from South Bellevue Station down Newport, connects to the transit center, and then it'll connect Costco employees and folks, trying to go pick up their Costco run, ultimately terminating at the Highlands. So this is underway. CPD staff, public works staff, we worked directly with Metro. We're also working with Sound Transit. They have a couple buses here, so looking to incrementally improve our bus system. And so this is, we're kind of entering phase 2 on this. For the TIP, CPD supports Public Works, who's kind of the lead on this. We do this obviously every year for the 6-year TIP. We help with project development and sort of thinking about ways to improve our transportation network. So this is just sort of aligned with our mobility action plan and our transportation elements. So just trying to make sure that our high-level goals are then fed into project-level sort of priorities. The active transportation study, so this would be a new ask. This is basically meant because we have not had a major update in our active transportation planning since 2014. So it is long overdue. This project would evaluate our existing and future bike and pedestrian network, identifying projects, policies, programs, and importantly, updating our engineering design standards, which have not been updated significantly since 2010. So this kind of study would accomplish many goals, but sort of over encapsulating lots of the priorities that we need to address. Lastly, I'll just say we are interested in developing an annual traffic collision monitoring report. This is something that we kind of do informally, but it would be good to publish and just sort of show how we're doing in terms of collisions. So WashDOT collects data. We can then sort of take that data and see how that aligns with our safety priorities and provide just an ongoing pulse on how we're doing over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. So those were sort of the long-range planning pieces. So we just wanted to quickly remind the other things, this team, that's just part of the other community planning and development team, is working on permit process improvements. So that was a priority for this year. We have an update coming to you on September 15th, where we'll get into the details of that. We also have some large projects in the hopper. So the school district project is a major modification going to Development Commission. That generally garners a lot of community comments and feedback and tracking and reporting and all of that goes with it. We also have the Trailhead TOD project. So that's the large development that will involve not only land use, but building construction and all that. High Street, this is the shelter development agreement that council had adopted. So I've sent you construction updates on a quarterly basis, but in that, they're building 72 townhomes, a 220 assisted living facility, and we are currently have a land use application for another 200 apartments, which leaves still room for other projects that will come between those two bookends on a 9th. We have Park Place, which Development Commission just approved to demolish an existing office building and build 72 townhomes. We have another informal inquiries about another reuse of a commercial building going on, and then some other projects like that. So this is not a comprehensive list, but just want to tease out some larger scale projects that we are currently looking at. So that's sort of overall picture of what we think is in our hopper. And what I think we also wanted to put the slide up just so that as council, has this discussion and the timing of this work, and you see how this fits in with the overall city initiatives. And if you pick one as a priority, what implications it might have for some infrastructure investments, for instance, or other upgrades that might be needed. So they're sort of interconnected with other pieces that councils may care about more or may need to do in order for this to work. So we didn't get into that, but as you think about prioritization, you may want to keep that in mind. So in terms of next steps, we are looking for council feedback, and we can return to council with a 2026 funding requests resulting from prioritization. If you want us to do other things, prioritize that in the next year that we didn't anticipate during the budget cycle. So I think that concludes our presentation. So again, we're looking for council input.
Okay, I will start with questions. Obviously, this is a big old meaty topic, and we've brought together a lot of stuff that we've been talking about for several years. So any questions starting out? Councilmember Ray?
All right. Love the stuff around transportation, of course, but so a collision report, if we were to build that, what kind of collisions would that, come on, Thomas, would that include? I'm kind of riffing on the active transportation part of this too, and does it include pedestrian, does it include bike, does it include car and bus, and just what's it include?
Yeah, so collision report has not, it's kind of intangible at this point. We're sort of thinking about what could be in it. The thing we're mainly concerned based off of the, council's priorities and the mobility action plan are fatalities and serious injuries. So there's also like more minor injuries. I think WashDOT has like many classifications. Those are the two main things. So we really want to track to make sure that we're meeting our safety goals. When WashDOT has their data, it also includes factors that contributed to the collision. So maybe it's the vehicle ran off the road, or maybe it was there was an object that somebody hit. So these are all contributing factors. We want to sort of know if there's trends so that we can proactively address any concerns.
Great. I just think it sounds really very valuable and interesting, but that's for later in the discussion. And then second question for you. So what's the impact of Sound Transit's current financial woes on our timeline? Because last I heard we were maybe slipping a bit.
Yeah, and very, very timely. This is kind of, I would say, a week and a half ago. That was hot off the press. So just for everybody's knowledge, Sound Transit Board met a week and a half ago, and it was announced that they're basically 20 to 25% behind budget where they said they were going to be. The contributing factors to that is basically their assumptions on their finances. They use some kind of crude budgeting principles, and they're now using more recent data based off of their West Seattle Ballard project. So all that to say, in September, like mid-September, they're meeting again. We're going to have a better picture on a project-by-project basis of like what each of their several projects in ST3 will cost in today's dollars. And then they're going to go through a lengthy conversation through the end of the year to sort of talk about what needs to happen. They have 4 levers that they've mentioned that they can use. One of those would be pushing the project back. So that's the one you're referring to. We don't know yet, and we're going to kind of keep tabs on that, but it's a really great point. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. Yeah, and Thomas, one of my questions is for you, so you might as well stay up. So, the active transportation plan study, I remember we talked about this a little bit during budget, but can you walk us through the difference between the outcomes of that document and whatever we might have in the mobility action plan that kind of describes the current state of active transportation?
Yeah, they're very similar, I would say. One of the key deliverables that would be great to get is new projects. So our transportation improvement program project list comes like all the active transportation related biking, walking, like sidewalk kind of stuff. That all comes from 2014. So we haven't really updated any of our projects since then. So we are chipping away at a lot of those projects, but we just haven't developed any new projects since then.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Director Dollywall, help us develop new projects. So 2 questions for MFTE. Is that okay? Can I ask 2 more? MFTE, can you refresh my brain? So this council created MFTE pathway for High Point, or whatever it's called, up in the Highlands, and for the Pioneer Project. We had tabled kind of a broader discussion of like a central Issaquah-wide MFTE until being able to say, does this work as a lever that's available to us, right? And letting kind of the data bear out there first. How much time do you think we really need to be able to say, does this MFTE thing work as a tool for us here before we can have that conversation?
Sure, good question. So you're right. Currently the city's multifamily tax exemption is available for the TOD Trailhead project and High Street Shelter Development Agreement and any 2 new projects under the Pioneer Program that could apply. So it's not like it's not available to anyone, and so any 2 new projects could qualify for that under the Pioneer Program in Central Issaquah. So it's outside of Central Issaquah, it's not, but that's city's policy to get some of this growth where future transit is going to be. So, but in terms of the timing, the other thing that happened with the legislative bill was the TOD bill that got passed, which said at 80% AMI, is 20% of the units within the transit diameter of a quarter mile or whatever the around the transit center has to be affordable at 80% AMI, 20% units, and the cities have to get no impact fees and give 20-year MFTE. So it's not 12 years; it's a 20-year multifamily tax exemption. So where the future growth around transit is going to be, there are already these incentives that the city we have, some time to do this work for TOD areas, but that would be the program we would establish in that overlay. So that's available. Some of it is available, and some of it, when we align our codes with the TOD overlay, will come into play. But beyond that, it's council's, priority. If you want us to look at the, multifamily citywide, then we would add it to the work plan. One of the things I think the Eco Northwest report was saying that these are stacked on top of the others. So, parking is, with the new builds, the parking numbers are going down anyways. So that's not an incentive the city can offer, that you do less parking and therefore you get that. So that incentive is no longer available, but there's an option or flexibility built into the regulations that and then we've already taken out the structured parking requirement. So then it leaves, what else do you trade for multifamily a tax exemption in terms of an incentive, or is it just an entitlement that council can go? So it's an in-depth policy discussion to expand it citywide. And then the other part of it is the economics. How much does the city not get in additional tax revenue, short-term, long-term? How does that all work out?
All right, I'm sure we'll talk about it. And then just more broadly, can you help me, I mentioned this to you right before the meeting too, but what's required of us and what's come through the state is overwhelming. There's a lot there, and we have limited staff capacity, just like cities everywhere, and building back up. Can you help me and the council understand, given that and given what's required of us, how much room do we really have to play in terms of trading off some policy conversations that we'd like to have in the upcoming biennium?
Yeah, the resources.
I know it might be kind of hard to say, Zach, you can have two. We've got all these required things and we can have two more conversations about things. But that's kind of what I'm looking for in my head, is how much flexibility do we really have?
Yeah, we're excited about our team. They come with a very happy, excited attitude of rolling up their sleeves and getting into it, but they're also humans that have lives outside of work. And so we don't want to burn anyone out, and yet we want to give them the ability to enjoy planning work and be a fulfilling work. So we're trying to balance that out with all of them. Obviously, there's a learning curve. There's what's in the, there's also the priority of people asking for permits. So obviously, that will prioritize then some of the long-range piece. One of the things with merging the two long-range and current planning teams, which I'm a firm believer, is that you're a better planner if you understand what it means on the ground. And you can do your code writing and long-range planning. So it's the two sides of the coin. And so not having two separate teams with two separate managers, we're building the capacity to do both current planning and long-range. The benefit for the city is it's an agile team. So if construction slows down, we can pivot them more towards long-range. And if long-range, if we've accomplished other things, we can have them work on the current planning piece. But it's a learning curve part. We're excited where they are today. We'll build two more planners to the team, but the capacity isn't unlimited. So I think as we talk about council's priorities, then we can better evaluate, where, if it is a one big project, maybe it's a one-time cost for a consultant to help us out with that. If it is a lot of other things, what does that look like? So we can figure out what can be done in-house, what we can have consultant help for, and put some dollars and cents to it. But I think we've done large projects in the past, thank you to council, with some consultant help. But we also want to now sort of do things really deep and well. So as you think about prioritization, my recommendation would be, instead of doing 20, can we pick 5 that we can do really well on, or something? I don't know what the right number is at this point, but and council's desires to do what you need to do. And so that will then inform us, and do we need more FTE? Do we have the capacity with existing staff? Can we offload some of this stuff for consultant help? If it's a very high priority for council getting it done in the next year, what does that look like? Sorry, I
Director
don't have a
Dhaliwal?
concrete.
or excuse me, City
City
Administrator
Administrator.
Bob Quist. I'm looking at one, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Council President, members of the council. Let me put a finer point on this. The administration has heard the council's frustration that we are not moving as fast as you would like on some of these projects. We feel, even with the exceptional staff that we have, that we are at the limits of our staffing capability. Your exercise tonight is very important for us, because if you come and say, thank you, we really appreciate all the good work that you're doing. However, here are the things we still would like to see the city accomplish. We need to go back to the drawing board to see what other resources we can allocate. And then the timing of this is very important, because we are preparing for you for your consideration, any adjustments to the biennial budget over the course of October and November. And so if you come up tonight and say, these are really important projects, and you have said to us previously that our work on some of these initiatives are very important, we're going to have to look at other parts of the city government to fund this, either through additional staffing, either through consultant dollars, but we will then come to you with potential reductions and other things that we do that perhaps are less important. And so these are always difficult conversations to have. We certainly don't anticipate layoffs, and I want to be very clear that we're not suggesting that, but there may be other projects, other infrastructure, other initiatives that the administration may come back and say, okay, in order to do what you'd like, here's what you have to give up. And so that's what we're trying to get a ring around tonight, so that when you do have these budget discussions, it's not general, it can be as specific as possible.
Okay, I think I saw Councilmember Zhang, then Deputy Council President DeMichelle.
I have a few questions. So I guess my first question was, is there any point at which we would revisit the MFTE and affordability levels that we've put into the Pioneer program, given that we haven't had uptake to date? It sounds like when we do the TOD overlay, we'll just do basically, what's in the state law. So would that supersede the Pioneer program, or kind of how do we see those two things fitting together?
Yeah, we haven't figured that out. The Pioneer program is for the first two projects. So if those come into play before that, and then council can then decide to extend it to more if you choose to do. But the TOD stuff, there's a bare minimum that the state wants us to do, which is at 80% AMI, 20% of the units. But if council desires deeper affordability, say at 60% or whatever, you can lower that number or percentage. So there could be, you can go above and beyond what the state law requires, but you at least have to meet the minimum. So there'll be some policy discussions around what does Issaquah want around transit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess my other questions are around, we'd been discussing, as various things come up with different development projects, what are some of the ways that we could change our code to address some of the things that we've been learning? So I'm wondering if there's anywhere that we're keeping a running list of those, because there's a couple of them that we talked about that weren't on this list. For example, like providing more optionality with the green building certifications, or one thing we talked about a lot, and that was like one of our top priorities from our council retreat, was the neighborhood businesses, which I didn't see on that list either. So I'm curious, like, is there somewhere that's like a parking lot for all of the ideas, which even if they're not, we're not able to prioritize them given staff time, I would like to have like a running list that we just, add things to.
Sure, a couple ways we could do that. We have hardwired that future updates list because we wanted to capture that snapshot of what those conversations were. We can start adding to the bottom of that. Those two items that you mentioned, Councilmember Jang, are somewhat in that future updates list because there's a sustainability ICAP goal piece that wasn't done in, so we did make some sustainability options there, but we were waiting for energy code and all that kind of stuff. So that would be my recommendation, that we start adding to that future updates list. We say, here's what was decided in 2023, but then here's some other things. In addition, we have our annual code update, which, we maintain internally of things that come up. So that would be the other place we could add these to, that we can tackle that year. But if they're long-term, they could be tackled under the future updates list.
Okay.
Or added to that, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, last question. So you all know I'm personally quite skeptical of, large language models and AI, but I'm very curious if we've considered the potential, especially with like updating code language, where large language models it's basically like the task that is best suited to them because it's language related. If that's something that we could do to potentially help increase staff capacity in terms of, we could have the large language models do a first pass and then have the staff, more like review it as a way to potentially, increase staff capacity given like what options we have.
And Councilmember Jang, members of the council, that's the kind of feedback we're looking for, because that's a different kind of resource. That's an IT resource, that is third-party consultant resource. And so if that's something you're interested in, we need to know, because that's something we need to budget. I mean, certainly there are communities that are looking at this. There are several firms around the country that are assisting communities doing this. But again, it's time, it's money that we currently don't have budgeted. So if it's something you'd like us to consider, we'd like you to hear about it tonight.
Yeah, and I definitely don't mean to suggest that we should AI everything that we're doing. I'm just saying, for the specific task of updating language, where it, could be a tool that could be useful.
And our challenge is we have no AI staff members. We have no staff members currently budgeted to work on any of these projects. And so if this is something that the council feels is important in the second year of the biennium, we need to hear from you so that we can come back to you in October with some budget proposals.
I think that's it. I mean, I guess for that, I'd be interested to see what the level of cost would be in terms of staffing.
And that's what we're asking for this
okay.
evening.
Yeah.
So if that's something, then we would work on, some budget projections of the technology piece plus just the staffing piece, and we would come up. And if it's something that the council's interested, then we would say, these are things that you may consider reducing in 2026 in order to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Quick follow-up there, Councilmember Hall.
A super quick follow-up. And I imagine like municipal vendors that produce this kind of IT software are still kind of, like in this space, I imagine this is still emerging within municipal like vendors.
There are vendors that have partnered with cities all over America. I don't have a count. I mean, I would bet it's anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen vendors that are offering things similar to what Councilmember Jang has described. We would have to evaluate what those vendors are, see what the technology is, see what the costs associated are. Again, we're happy to do all this. That's the reason we asked you to have the session tonight. It really just comes down to making that list, adding up the dollars, and then coming back to you and saying, here are things that you may not be able to then do, perhaps somewhere else in the city government, in order to accomplish those goals.
Yeah, if I may add, just today in Government Tech magazine, there's Bellevue's showcased in that of how they're using in the Development Services Department of answering public inquiries and questions. But it's like Wally said, it's very vendor driven. It's a startup that's providing that service. So we can look into what that is costing them. But it's also a much larger city that probably is resourcing it to take the first initiative around that. But we also heard from Economic Vitality Commission when I went and talked to them about permit process improvements. That's one thing they said, well, what's the city doing about, using AI kind of thing.
Thank you. Deputy Council President DiMichele.
Thank you. So I was really interested in the housing strategy work plan update. When I was running for council, that was one of the documents that I just read front to back and back again. It really was a really well done plan. And it's hard to believe that we are at a point in thinking back to it, how much things have changed, and really it does need to be updated. So, and then I'm looking at, I'm also very interested in the MFTE that we've already talked about, but also the expanding housing incentives for faith-based owned organizations. And so I'm kind of, if you could walk me through, would it be possible to roll like the MFTE study or the faith-based owned organization study into this overall update to the housing strategy? Or is there a good reason to keep these as standalone projects?
Yeah, from a from a thoughtful way, if you want to approach this, you would do the strategy work plan first. And then that will have a prioritization within it of what you want to do for each strategy. And in that, you could prioritize these other two, which are more implementation than perhaps the work plan piece. If that would be a better way to kind of talk about the big picture and then do these two things that are more implementation level.
So are we, sorry, but are we looking at, if we were to put them all under the plan update, it would actually perhaps delay implementation of, in
Of
other
these
words,
two,
how fast
possibly.
do we want to get this
Yeah,
done?
yeah. Yeah, but if they're identified as action items in the plan, then you could delay the updating the plan and just focus on the implementation pieces. Yeah, those would be the trade-offs.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, then I think I will take an opportunity for public comment. So I have a few people in the audience. Anybody interested in making public comment? Seeing you lean forward. Yes, no? Yeah, fantastic. If you'll come up to the microphone and then if you press the button, it turns red. That will give you an opportunity. They're all staff, so. Yep.
Okay. So, hello, my name is Linda Bailey. I live 3 blocks down in Old Town on the other side. And old school, I was coming back from dinner at sunset and I thought, there's a meeting tonight. I'm going to stop in there and let them know what's on my mind. So it's interesting that this was a topic tonight. And Wally, I agree with everything that you have to say, or city administrator, I'm not sure what to call you. But I live downtown. I've been downtown for years. And what's changed for us, besides the new daycare moving in and messing with our alley that we park in, is the sound. We've got 18, when 18 closes, or the 90 construction, the city changes for us. The sound coming down Second, the sound going up Sunset to 90, and the other way is insane. And so when I hear your nice presentation about transportation and planning, where is the sound control for Old Town? There was a thing at one point about sound control and calming traffic or whatever for Old Town. Believe me, we need that initiative back. Old Town is taking traffic. If you don't like the traffic on Sunset, then zip over and grab Andrews or Bush. How many accidents I can count just in this year? I think there's been 5 accidents at Bush and Second. And these are a lot of times folks cutting through, coming down from 90 or the Highlands or wherever, cutting through, come over to Bush and cut in. People get confused about the crosswalks or whatever, so they think they're going to turn. I think it was just a few days ago, it was a motorcycle and a car. The transportation around Old Town, we're taking the brunt of I-90 and 18 traffic and what's happening there. We want to be good neighbors, we want to help, but we are taking the brunt of it between Second and Sunset East. And I'm just hoping that someone could bubble this to the top. I have all the respect for government process. I've heard a lot of that tonight, but we really need Old Town traffic calming, or whatever it used to be called, to come back and take notice of what's happening between Second and Sunset. 18 to 90 isn't done yet. And a whole lot of people now know the trail of coming down Issaquah Hobart Road and up Second or up Sunset. It's insane. Yeah, there's signs, no trucks. No truck. We might as well put a please no trucks on that, because the trucks are still coming through. There's no penalty for trucks coming through. I'm a home office person. I work in the window of East Sunset Way. Just the amount of traffic and trucks that come through there every day, especially when 18 or 90 is construction problems. We can't turn a blind eye to that. Right? It's changing our community. It's changing the neighborhoods around in this area. Our Old Town, the history of Old Town is fantastic, and we're not capitalizing on that interesting fact. When we look at our neighboring cities like North Bend and Snoqualmie and even up in the Wine District, we're missing an opportunity, and instead of growing in interest and other reasons to grab our local neighbors to come through, we're getting the traffic. That's it. We're going to be the traffic headquarters. We're not even biking headquarters anymore because bikers are afraid of Sunset. So just speaking up today to please bring attention back to the traffic that's coming in and out of I-90 and in and up Issaquah Hobart. They need to go somewhere. I know 20 years ago, the bypass was a perfect opportunity and it was a missed opportunity, but maybe we could send business traffic through another way rather than Sunset and 2nd Avenue East. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, any other public comments? Only one other public folks. Nobody coming in? No? Okay, fantastic. Well, we appreciate hearing from residents. We have an opportunity here to provide feedback. So in general, was there any direction here? Was there any big question, or is it just, what do we want to see? Okay, who wants to start us out? Wow. Okay, Councilmember Hall.
Yeah, I can just share some preliminary thoughts. Thank you again. Number one, thank you staff for being here with us tonight. Thank you for allowing us to have this kind of prioritization conversation, and thank you, council, for agreeing to do it. A couple just thoughts off the top of my head. There's a lot. I'm done. My 5 minutes are up. There's a lot that's required of us. Almost overwhelmingly is kind of one of my initial impressions from the packet. So I would want to, of course, when we ask input on prioritizing what's required of us, of course. I also would want to, since this is related to the question I asked earlier, personally, I would want to avoid any major changes to budget or reallocation of resources during the mid-buy. Seems like that would be a much more pertinent conversation to have as we head into the next biennial budget. And from the outset of moving to biennial budget making, we were all very, we were warned just to ensure that we don't end up doing supplemental budgets every mid-buy. And so that's just one concern I've always had. Though, and I think former Councilmember Hunt would appreciate this, there is still a lot within the Eco Northwest report that we can prioritize, and that's where I would like to see the focus on outside of what's required of us. We have done quite a bit in that work already, but there are some things related to, does our inclusionary zoning makeup really actually make economic sense to developers? There's the development density bonus program or bonus density program, one of the two, that needs kind of a hard look at it. And then, yeah, there was parking, although I guess the state legislature has made changes to that too. So we'll have to be looking at that anyway. So that is kind of where my head sits right now, is do what's required of us. Try not to make too many major changes to budget going into the mid-buy, but prioritizing what was told of us by the consultants that we paid to, or was it 2 years ago? Was it 2023, the Eco Northwest report? Really trying to check that whole report off with a box would be where I'd like to see our resources. Thanks. Oh, and if you don't mind, one other thing, I completely agree with Councilmember Jang around kind of adding on to our future updates list. I have kind of a little list just from conversations that we've had in committee that would make sense to add to that. We've had conversations around step backs, although we've created kind of this new flexibility, or sorry, that's for outdoor amenity space. Setbacks, then there's outdoor amenity space. We've created this new flexibility option, but then there's also, is that really the right policy? The commercial space height, 15 feet and 17 feet, I think something we were talking about, same with the window facade transparency. And then, as was said, kind of the menu of certification options instead of just LEED. And then also the cornerstones. Oh, by the way, should I ask, you're right, in the Title 18 future update list, it has like neighborhood cafes in that. Is that the same thing as kind of this corner store conversation that we want to have. Is that what you meant by it's reflected in?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think some of that conversation happened with the comp plan update,
Okay.
with Planning and Policy Commission and I believe Council, where the idea was that this should happen at a neighborhood level. So as we do the neighborhood planning, that could be one of the things that could be asked.
All right. Well, anyways, that was the list of things that I had seen come up at PDE. If anyone else has anything else that they'd like to add, make sure to incorporate that into your comments. Thanks.
Deputy Council President DiMichele.
So I think Councilmember Hall said that we could get choose 2 or 3. So I think mine would be 6 and 7. Again, the housing strategy work plan to me is just a foundational document, and I think the last housing strategy work plan informed a lot of the work that we did over the past 6 years or so, and I would expect that update would help us give direction. Especially we have a new director coming in or new manager coming in for economic vitality. I just think it would be a great time to do that. And I do think that the faith-based owned land and MFTE are part of that strategy that we would be thinking about. So at least think about covering those through the strategic work plan update. And then I agree with Councilmember Hall that the housing analysis that was done by Eco Northwest, that we need to follow up on that. And then I think I've spoken many times in the transportation area about my support for the study for the Central Issaquah Station and Alignment Study. And so I will just reiterate that very briefly, that that would be certainly a top priority for me as well. Thanks.
Councilmember Shing.
Yeah, generally agree with everything that we've heard so far. To Councilmember Hall's point about, we don't necessarily need to make like massive changes in the mid-biennium in terms of budgeting, staff, and all those things. I think on the list that was provided, the 3 high priority items seem right to me in terms of the things that are, the most imminent high priorities, which is implementing the Eco Northwest reports, transit orange development, and updating the housing strategy. I think probably doing the housing strategy will then help us figure out, for the next cycle of the work plan, what are the code updates that we might need to actually implement that housing strategy. So, generally aligned with that. I do think, if there's some really small updates like this, green building certification thing should not take very long. We should just take what a city like Bellevue does and just, in terms of, these certifications are in the same category of stringency, and then put it into our code in terms of, these are like the different requirements. Because anyway. And I, as someone who works in the green building industry, offer up my expertise for free for that one. So, but yeah, I think in terms of, which ones we want to spend significant staff time on, I think the 3 that were identified as high priority in the report seem to be correct to me.
Thank you. What's next? Councilmember Chair.
Thank you. First, thanks for the presentation tonight, keeping it quite clear and simple for us. I appreciate that. I do agree that 6, 7, 8 are the high priority ones, and we should keep a focus on those 3. Out of those 3, I agree with Deputy Council President DiMichele that the Central Issaquah Plan update to incorporate transitory development overlay is a high priority. I'd put that at the highest for me of the 3. To me, it's a long-term planning piece that is going to take a significant area in our valley floor when we get done with the zoning around it and then the overlay that we may put on top of it. It's going to take careful planning to figure out what we would like to see there, and then feedback from the community to find out what they would like to see there. And trying to work and continue that process and continue to move it forward, I think is very important for us. 2043 might not be the new day. It might be out a little bit farther to 2044 or 48, but those
dates roll quickly to us, and we need to make sure that we are keeping the momentum on that project. Thank you.
Councilmember Martz?
Thank you. I would say items 6 and 7, the housing-related pieces, those two, the high priority, are the highest priority for me personally. You know, I have been following the election cycle this year. I guess I'm technically a candidate, so it's probably a good idea. But you know, my understanding is what the public is saying they care about the most is, you know, traffic and affordability of housing. And so what they're not saying is, you know, do you guys have a plan for when, you know, light rail gets here? So I think that's, I mean, I supported that. Everybody knows I have concerns about how that gets executed. That's important to do, but the housing pieces are really dire and direly urgent. And so 6 and 7 are the highest priority for me. 8 should get done. We're funding it. It will get done, but I'm desperate to hear more about housing strategies and how we can get affordability. I note some development that's occurring right now in the valley in multifamily housing that I'm excited about, that I hadn't known about, right on Newport. And so, you know, maybe that means the economy is starting to pick up a little bit. I don't know. I'm not an expert in real estate, but I'm excited about that. And we have to be able to look our residents in the eye and say, yes, we're doing everything we can to make Issaquah more affordable. So 6 and 7 are the highest priority for me. Thank you.
Nothing to add, Councilmember Ray. Okay. Well, then I will take a moment just to kind of step back on this. I think the report that we got from Eco Northwest was phenomenal, and that we should be full steam ahead on making those changes. And I would note that they really recognized that parking and whatever adjustments we need to make to MFTs or things like that all has to come together. So my preference would be then we have this state requirement to do parking. Rather than wait until the end when that is required, take that on and really be able to do the pro forma analysis that says, look, if we change the requirements on parking and the whatever structured parking requirements, does that enable our Pioneer project? Does that enable opportunities in the light rail area? Does that enable MFTE feasibility? So I think that is, from my perspective, a really important way to address what Eco Northwest told us in that report was, here's all the things that, all the reasons that you're not getting more affordable housing. So that's really important. I will also mention just permit streamlining. From my perspective, I know that wasn't, you know, like necessarily one of the new work plan items, but I want to make sure that the process improvements and the customer service focus and utilizing technology for things like an AI first draft review so that our staff members get the opportunity to do things that they love rather than having to do the manual, all of those pieces. I think that's a phenomenal way for us to be responsive to the community, get more affordability, and have our staff not be burnt out from those types of reviews. So that's something I want to emphasize. I also want to emphasize what Councilmember Zhang said. I think we have a few things here that are probably small enough or that we could borrow from another city easily enough that we don't have to make it into a big project. And toward that idea, I would respectfully ask council members and staff to just really, I feel like the Eco Northwest report gives us something that we need to act on now, and that if we spend our time on a housing strategy work plan, we're going to delay implementation of things. And I don't like the idea of spending time planning on something when we already have a plan that we haven't acted on completely. So I'm really concerned if we're going to say, oh, it's been a while since we did this, so we need to step back. Well, it's also been a while since we got the Eco Northwest report. And I really want to make sure that we are getting everything out of that we can before we go on another planning journey. And from my perspective, that also includes the neighborhood plans. Because I feel like we have a good set of neighborhoods, but we have things like traffic calming that people are asking for, or things like, thank you, things like the, just things that we can take care of without putting the time in a big planning project, that sometimes we've done these things and then haven't been able to act on all of them. And then, let's see, there were a few other things. I am, I'll be frank, concerned about putting too much time into light rail station planning, given Sound Transit's budget woes. I would love to have a conversation with council, with the community about, you know, I know when Kirkland was looking at Sound Transit 3 originally, they were like, hey, you could get us bus rapid transit now, and it would cost a third of the cost, and I'm willing to have that conversation. I think we still need the Central Issaquah plan. We still need an overlay there, but I think that if we are the last stop on this, that there is a possibility that we are going to spend lots and lots of money on planning for something that is going to be ultimately out of our control and that we won't end up receiving. So I have a little bit of concerns about putting those funding there. And then I also have a little bit of concerns about an MFT program that focuses on that 80% area median income as the income requirement, given the Seattle Times article about the market actually providing that 80 to 100% AMI housing at a more affordable rate in some cases. And so before we go into a deeper dive on MFTE and ways that we can provide tax exemptions to get this level of housing, I think we should be really clear about what is our role as government. Is our role providing the housing that the market cannot, or is our role creating an incentive that will create some of that through a developer? And what is the cost to that being a barrier for housing that could serve that at a market rate in anyway? So, okay. I'm going to take a step back here because I've written a lot of stuff down. I saw a lot of mentions of Eco Northwest report, a lot of housing strategy work plan, some different ideas on light rail station study and where we fall as a council there. Anybody want to take a second stab at any ideas, or should I ask staff, Councilmember Hall?
Well, I just wanted to completely agree with you on the sequencing of, we have the I don't know why I can't say this word, Eco Northwest report ahead of us with action items that we have been slowly ticking off over the years too. I would really like to see our focus on finalizing implementation of that plan before, well, and maybe I can phrase this as a question, Director Dollywall. My instinct would be I'd like to phase that where that is phase one, and then potentially now what are the next steps in a new housing strategy work plan comes after that. But do we need to be thinking about it that way, or would those things be happening kind of next to each other?
I think we can start with the report and say, here were the recommendations, here's what we've done, here's what we can do, conversation with council, and then tease out real quantifiable things from that report. It studied 3 strategies out of the 9 strategies that are in the housing action plan. So more work could be done about those other strategies, But these were prioritized because we had to quantify, there was only so much money, and we, had that conversation with council about which ones out of the 9 to pick to study. So we can look at the other strategies, but we can also look at the plan update more holistically before we study other strategies, because some of the lay of the land has changed just with legislature's focus on housing. Now with the new governors, roundtable that we attended, there's probably more stuff in the works of what to do at the state level that we will have to kind of pivot and do as well. So, but it provides a good foundation, the 9 strategies. It gives you something tangible rather than differences in opinion, and it's a community conversations that inform that plan, so that's a good place. But really, first step would be looking at that plan and saying, okay, what have we done out of implementation? One would be the Eco Northwest and these 3 strategies. Is there other things there, or do we start having, an update to the plan because things have changed at the state law level, or we've learned a few things, or middle housing has come into play that didn't exist when in 2018. So what does that shift look like from a housing act, strategies plan piece? So we're happy to do whatever council prefers in terms of the order that you'd like us to do. But there's starting with the phase 1 of looking at implementation in the Eco Northwest is certainly something we can start off and then build from there.
Councilmember Zhang?
To your point, I liked your point about, just given Sound Transit's funding situation, exploring different options. I'm curious if we could potentially retool part of the light rail station area and alignment planning to also include some potential alignments for bus rapid transit, so that we could compare, what those look like, and just be clear-eyed about, okay, well, and Sound Transit will probably have some budget implications, but just seeing, how that's going to change potentially the level of transit service that we get and what that would look like for our city. I think that could be a really interesting way that we could use this budget that we already have. As far as, planning for the transit-oriented development and the overlays and fitting in with the MFTs from the state, I think that kind of goes back to my original point of, are we going to revisit the MFTE in general? With the Pioneer project, we haven't really seen uptake of it, given where construction costs have changed over the last 5 years compared to a lot of the data that we have from MFT programs is from pre-pandemic. So I think we really need to, if we really are serious about doing this, I think we might need to take another look at this. That said, given the constraints with resources, it's probably fine if we I think it's good for us to prioritize what's in the Eco Northwest report, because that's actionable projects that we can implement now. And then, these other things, figure out how we can fit it in given staff capacity over time.
Yeah, one thing to, to add to this whole discussion about bus rapid versus light rail, that was Sound Transit's bone to the communities that didn't get light rail. So Renton and Kirkland. Long haul, there's a study that the state, funded, where Urban Land Institute sort of did that study, and I attended some of the presentation. What they found was, and the first time I heard this say in that fashion, high-cost cities and low-cost cities. So they looked at, places like Issaquah, light rail would be heavily used, and people would shed their cars much more than if, say, city of Auburn got light rail, because they still need to go, depend on their vehicles to go to their warehouse, and those connections and seem to be missing. So there's a lot that the region is learning in terms of light rail, but the city's investment, it would be the biggest public investment if Issaquah were to get the light rail station. The bus rapid transit that was part of the ST3 was $1 billion project to run a bus every 10 minutes from Burien to Linwood. And that's what you see happening on 405. So that also comes at a cost, because if you have bus rapid transit, you need a new lane where you're not behind cars. So so in terms of what we know at this point, based on the comparisons between those two, we already know some of these things. And city's planning has predicated the Central Issaquah plan, and everything sort of anticipates, and from the voters who've been paying and waiting for their grandchildren to ride the light trail in the future. So it's complicated, but at this stage, I think we are studying the preferred location. And the other thing that I think Public Works is taking a lead on is the over and under crossing discussion with council related to that. But yeah.
Deputy Council President Michelle.
Yeah, I was going to make remarks very similar. I think probably it would help us to take a look at what is bus rapid transit. The perfect example of bus rapid transit is Pacific Highway, where you have a long, long corridor with many, many businesses. And it is not at all similar to what we have here. We have really good connections down I-90 already, which take us places very rapidly. But where bus rapid transit would fit into Issaquah is very difficult to tell because we don't have that long, long corridor of businesses and housing where people get off and on every 2-3 blocks. We just don't have anything like that. So I think it would be very good for us to have like a work study session to explore those two and just explain what the advantages and disadvantages of light rail versus rapid transit would be for a location like Issaquah. The other thing, I would hate to see us in a moment of headlines give up on a major project because we're facing financial problems. We have faced financial problems on these kinds of projects forever, and yet somehow we have a light rail system that now goes all the way to Redmond. And so I think for us to toss in the towel at this point with just one headline, what they're doing, I think, in my opinion, is they're aligning their budget with reality. That doesn't mean that we're going to lose this project. It means that we're going to have better budgeting. So I'm not ready to throw in the towel on the light rail project at this point. I'd like to wait and see where we're going to go. A lot of things are happening in this country economically. We do not know where this is going to end up. So those are my 2 comments.
Councilmember Martz.
So one of the challenges when talking about the light rail project and Sound Transit and transit in this area is the combination of, it's not like, are we gonna not get a super great mass transit system that would come to Issaquah? Whenever I talk to people in the community about how this is gonna shape up and about how we're gonna have to go into Bellevue before we can get into Seattle, people are miserable. And they say, what the heck, man? I can take the 554 right now straight into Seattle. So this whole thing needs a lot of care and attention. We all in this area spend a lot of money on our tabs every year to pay for Sound Transit. And what's coming is not perfect. It's really, in a lot of ways, will look worse than what we have right now. Meanwhile, this massive job center that is South King County is completely unserved for us, right? Like getting to South King County from Issaquah with transit is just a non-starter. You can't do it. And that's where the jobs are, right? If we want to talk about connecting folks in Issaquah with where the jobs are, and there's jobs in Seattle and there's jobs in Bellevue, but I've spent most of the last 25 years commuting to Kent and dealing with the S-curves, and they're miserable, and it would so benefit from having some sort of transit. So I say all these things just to say that, we measure all that against what I continue to believe is a real risk of getting lots and lots of parking here for the folks who live further east. So, I want to see it happen. I want that all this money that I've been pouring into tabs for all these years, and the aspiration that East King County showed when it supported ST3. I want to see all that happen. I'm not ready to throw in the towel, but there are a lot of dragons in the public policy between here and getting the transit that would impact Issaquah residents and would reduce traffic and reduce the amount of pollution that's generated by car trips in and out of Issaquah, as we have, whatever it is, 12,000 cars per hour for the morning commute and in the afternoon commute. So, I'm sticking with it, but I have just really, really serious concerns. So meanwhile, I think that we should move forward with the housing pieces that we can. If part of our solution is to get better mass transit here, an equal part of the solution is to provide houses for the people that work here and to provide jobs for the people who live here. And let's work on, if we have those keys in front of us and they're in our destiny to change, let's go get that done. And then if sound transit happens in my lifetime, I will say huzzah.
Well, maybe that's a wonderful way to take it. Councilmember Zhang.
Yeah, Councilmember Martz mentioned, our residents who complain about how light rail will not improve their transit service. I have a constituent in my household who complains about this literally every day, who fears the day that the light rail bridge over I-90 will open, because that will mean that, to go to Seattle to go to work, you're going to have to transfer at the South Bellevue station, which is out of the way. So, that's a daily discussion in my household. I think, your point on just like the general transit service in this area is very well taken. And one thing that voters are very concerned about, including our public commenters, is the amount of traffic going through Old Town from people who live in Renton Highlands or Maple Valley south of here and work north of here in Bellevue or Redmond or Seattle. And, there really is no way about it that we are very severely constrained by geography. The most direct way is to go between Squawk and Tiger Mountain or between Squawk and Cougar Mountain. And guess what? The only way to go through there is on our neighborhood streets. And currently there's no transit options. And so one thing that, we've been talking with voters about is the potential to add more transit options there. If there is, and this would, be a whole other can of worms, but if there is the potential to say, hey, just thinking about where our actual needs are as a community in terms of reducing traffic, reducing pollution in our residential neighborhoods is, okay, sure, we want bus rapid transit to Kirkland, but really what we need is bus rapid transit to Maple Valley. And so if there's any way for us to say, okay, we're in this budget situation, how can we figure out what is actually the best use of our dollars instead of just going down this path that we approved 10 years ago because that's what was presented to voters in 2016. We're in a totally different place now. I think basically everything is on the table, and that's something where, just given everything that people are not excited about having a train to Kirkland. Really. So I think, how can we, as a city, kind of facilitate that discussion and see if this is the point that we need to just totally rethink what transit service we're getting. And bus rapid transit is less expensive than light rail, so maybe if we don't get the light rail, we get two BRTs, which would actually be way better.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add is the communities that didn't want light rail at the time were where the alignment was running through residential neighborhoods. So that was sort of the pushback. I know that for Renton, and I know that for Kirkland as well. So it was more about impacts to people that were living in those areas. Here we're connecting a dot of a future potential. It may not exist today, but the consultant who's done some case studies for us is also what this can look like. And I wish we could share some of those photos with you, because it's phenomenal of what transit and land use, how well connected those two items are. And it isn't what's on the ground today, but what a future light rail station could bring to Issaquah. So I think it's a good debate and it's a good conversation. Perhaps we need to do more work in terms of sharing some of the success stories of light rail and other things.
So I guess one thing I would say is as much as we may have some questions about whether or not light rail and sound transit is going to hem and, other things that are appearing on here, I don't think that changes our commitment to the Central Issaquah plan and the idea that we still need to do something that enables housing on the valley floor that makes it feasible, whether that is through parking adjustments, what level of height requirement or height is allowed, the density in those spaces. So it may be that we can still move toward that idea even with some of the differing opinions on what the light rail area is. There's still that sense of the Central Issaquah plan and the housing that we need to figure out how to unlock that in that area. Okay, anybody else coming through? Okay, City Administrator.
Council President, members of the council, thank you for this great feedback. We would like to take a couple minutes recess to make sure we compare our notes to hear what we've thought we've heard and to see if we've identified anything that might require additional resources, or can we address what you've done, what you've said this evening with the resources we have. So if we could take 5 minutes or so, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is there was some feedback on what do we want to do, but there was also some feedback on what timeline, which things get handled first. And so if there's any sense of that you can come up with
Sure.
during the recess, that would be great.
Very good. Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Sure.
Thanks. We'll be back at 8:20. Okay, we are back from our recess. Y'all have had an opportunity to chat and talk. What is your feedback?
Again, thank you. Few topics we wanted to cover. First of all, let me talk about transportation. It's a multifaceted topic. It certainly goes far beyond planning and zoning requirements. Mayor Pauley feels very strongly about this. We've expended a lot of resources dealing not only with the future of light rail, but also there are policy issues. Thomas Valdez is here. Thomas's time gets pulled in lots of different directions and is getting pulled even more and more into the policy making at Sound Transit. The administration feels very strongly that we need to continue to be very active advocating for what's in ST3. The voters of Issaquah have approved it, the voters of King County have approved it, and we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that the Sound Transit Board, under Mayor Pauley's direction, understands that this is still a priority for Issaquah. With that said, there are absolutely issues happening today that we need to continue to be mindful of, internal traffic issues in Old Town and elsewhere, advanced transportation systems, all the things that we have talked about. And so we are committed to doing that. We have various pots in the budget to deal with it. We're looking at continuing to reallocate existing staff. Andrew Snyder, who's on the call this evening, more and more of her time is being spent in transportation planning, working with our partners. And so that will continue for both short-term and long-term transportation needs. So we will continue to work on that. We also heard from you this evening interest about Central Issaquah and how light rail does or does not impact Central Issaquah. Kristen is here to talk maybe just a little bit about some of the assumptions that we've been under, and any changes to light rail coming or not coming will have impacts on how Central Issaquah plays out.
Yes, the Central Issaquah plan was actually started in 2007 prior to any discussions about light rail coming to Issaquah. And then the discussion started, so then we put it in there. But the whole idea is that our development would occur in Central Issaquah or the rest of our development would occur in Central Issaquah prior to light rail coming here. But it does play a factor. But even if light rail were to go away and we did bus rapid transit that comes through here, I live in Kirkland. I'm a mile from the rapid transit station that they're planning now. it's a huge planning process. So whether it's light rail or bus rapid transit, there is planning that has to occur around where that stop will be. So it does play a role either way in Central Issaquah.
And thank you, Kristen. I think it just reinforces for us that this is just a multi-pronged approach. And we hear loud and clear from the council that your expectation of the administration is to attack it in a multi-pronged way. Mayor Pauly's direction to her staff is to attack it in a multi-pronged way. So we will do that, but there are many consequences. We just need to continue to be mindful of them. The last piece we wanted to talk about was the Eco Northwest report. There seems to be consensus there to take a report that's already there, recommendations that are already in hand. What do we need to do to make that happen? And so, again, Kristen, if you could talk a little bit about where we stand with that report and what you think it will take to make more meaningful progress in 26.
Sure. So as Minnie mentioned early, the Eco Northwest report was addressing 3 of the different strategies that are currently in the housing strategy action plan. So to do those, that would be implementing what we already have in place as far as the plan goes. And that could be done earlier with consultant help. We would need that. To do the housing action plan, to update the housing strategy action plan requires much broader outreach, because then you get new information, you get new input from the public, and you completely, redo a plan. And then you start addressing that as well. So yes, we did talk about how addressing Eco Northwest and the actions that they provided in there could happen much sooner than the housing strategy plan.
We think that additional resources would be needed to do what we're hearing the council say you'd like to do. Those resources, I think, can vary depending on the outside help we can get. Arch may be a resource, and if they're a resource with their staff, that's probably less dollars than going to a third party. So what we'd like to commit to do this evening is take that as a to-do. We'll do a little bit more investigation as to what we think would be needed, and we'll include that in your mid-buy budget discussions. And so if it makes sense and we can find a funding source, great. If not, we'll stay the course. But of all the things you've talked about this evening, that's the one piece that we're going to take from tonight and work on a little bit. So, Council President, I'm just looking to you and your colleagues to confirm that's a reasonable takeaway from this evening. Otherwise, we'll stay the course with what we're planning on doing during 26.
I'm seeing some good head nods, so I
I'm
think.
sorry?
I'm seeing some good head nods, so I think the focus on the Eco Northwest is great. So are we understanding that then the housing strategy work plan as an update, because it requires more public engagement, would be longer and larger, would be after that? And are we at this point adding it to the work plan, or saying that we can evaluate again before that becomes an item?
So
We can add it to the work plan for 27 and 28, and we'll discuss that with that year's budgets. And I'll have a discussion about how much it'll cost and part of that. So no mid-year budget adjustment needed, because we'll focus on the implementation for next year, and then for the next 2 years' budget, 27 and 28, we'll add it to the work plan.
Okay, so how are we feeling about all of this? So potentially a mid-biennium adjustment to enable the Eco Northwest recommendations. And then looking beyond that would be a 27-28 budget decision. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, looking at the agenda, again, that was our only agenda item. So we've got good of the order. Anybody have anything? Okay, Councilmember Hall.
Just really quickly to say thank you to the city. I was at the Rainy Farmers Market this weekend, and the city had a booth with a bunch of boards and maps and design pictures for the Northwest Sammamish Road project. And John Mortensen was there with other staff holding down the fort and talking to community members. He told me they're at 90% design, which is outstanding. And I heard nothing but good things, community members coming over and being like, what's this? Oh, really? Awesome. So anyways, just thank you to staff. That seemed to go very well.
Excellent. Just one more item for good of the order. Just a reminder. Oh, okay. 2 more items. Give me 1 second. The Eastside Fire and Rescue Chief, there's an event at Sammamish City Hall tomorrow from 2 to 4. So if anybody wants to meet the finalists, candidates for that, please join me. And Councilmember Zhang?
I just wanted to make sure everyone knows the Salmon on Sunset celebration is this Saturday from 10 to 6. It's basically you can watch the salmon with way less crowds than Salmon Days. So I enjoy going to that and encourage everyone else to attend as well.
Deputy Council President?
All right, as long as we're praising, I attended the Culture Fest on Friday, and it was amazing. You were there too. I mean, I think we had a pretty good representation from the council. I think it was the best crowd. This is the 4th or 5th year that I've attended. I think this is the best crowd they've ever had, and the amount of people performing and engagement was just over the top. It was just a really nice evening, and again, the city staff did a wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you.
Yes, and pointing at Clerk Geezer did a wonderful job, so appreciate that. Okay, well, our Love Fest announcements going on. We appreciate you all for being here, and at that, we are adjourned at 8:33 p.m. Thank you.